Name of subject internal combustion engines. Name of chapter ESI engines fuel supply system, ignition system, combustion. Name of topic functions and working of ignition coil. Contents functions and working of ignition coil. So dear friends, in the last few videos, as we discussed about the working and construction of battery ignition system as well as the magneto ignition system. So in the case of the battery ignition system, one very important device is there, and that device is nothing but called as a ignition coil. So in this video, we are going to talk something about the ignition coil, its function and its construction. So just in front of your screen here, we have the actual model or actual diagram of the ignition coil. So ignition coil is nothing but the coil which consisting a number of kinds of windings. So winding is nothing but the copper wire is wounded on one centrally placed iron core. So if you see over here, here is one centrally iron core rod which is situated over here, and this rod is wounded by a number of tons of a copper wire. Okay, so this copper wire consisting a secondary winding coil and the primary winding coil. So as I said you earlier in that particular video also, the number of tons are maximum or more of the copper wire in the case of secondary winding, and whereas the number of tons are less in the case of the primary windings. So also in this particular diagram also the small turns are there, and this is nothing but called the secondary coil or the secondary windings, where the number of turns are greater than this particular bigger windings, or we can say this is the primary. So number of turns are less in the case of primary, and the number of turns of copper wire are more in the case of the secondary. So initially again here the primary terminal is there, and here is the also the another primary terminal is there. So here is that particular output terminal which is connected to the distributor system of the spark plug. So again in this case what happened, as the current which is coming from the battery, say 12 volt, it will come first upon inside this particular primary winding. So the number of turns are less, so it will enhance the voltage of that particular current coming from the battery. Near about 12 volt will convert into near about 5000 volt as it will supplying or as it will pass from the primary winding. So once it will passing from the primary winding, then it will forward it to the contact breaker as well as that particular as we already discussed about that particular capacitor, and that EMF will reverse back, and it will come inside the secondary winding, where the again the amount of voltage will be boosted up near about from 5000 to 22,000 because of the current supplying from the secondary coil. And that high amount of voltage or current will pass from the output terminal to that particular distributor system, as we discussed in the last video itself. So this is something about the ignition coil. So again this particular diagram is the actual ignition coil which look like this. So as I said you earlier, the ignition coil is look like this one. Okay, again this is in very according to the size of the engine, according to the requirement of the engine, the ignition coil sizes are there. So it will look like this from externally, it will look like this, and its construction, that is like the primary winding and the secondary winding like this one, along with one centrally placed iron core. So I hope you understood the working as well as the construction details of the ignition coil. So thank you so much for watching this video.